When a broke single father pulled a drowning stranger from the ocean, he had no idea she was worth $3 billion. What happened next would tear his world apart, because billionaires don't fall for ordinary men, do they? This is the story of Ryan Hayes, the man who saved a life and lost his heart. Stay until the end to discover how one moment of courage changed everything. And hey, drop a comment with your city name below. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The ocean doesn't ask permission before it takes what it wants. Ryan Hayes understood this as he sat on the sand that October evening, watching the Pacific throw itself against the California shoreline with the kind of violence that made smart people pack up early. The sky had turned that peculiar shade of amber gray that preceded bad weather, and the wind carried the sharp taste of salt and something electric, the promise of a storm rolling in from somewhere far away. Most families had already abandoned the beach. Folded chairs, deflated beach balls, and forgotten plastic shovels littered the sand like evidence of a hasty evacuation. But Ryan stayed, as he often did, letting his 6-year-old son Liam squeeze every last minute from their Sunday together. "Dad, look! I made it taller!" Ryan turned his attention to the sandcastle, if you could call it that. More accurately, it was a lumpy mound with a stick jutting from the top like a flagpole, listing dangerously to one side. But in Liam's eyes, it was a fortress worthy of kings. "That's incredible, buddy," Ryan said, and he meant it. 3 years of single fatherhood had taught him that the architecture didn't matter. What mattered was the pride in his son's voice, the way Liam's whole face lit up when someone noticed his work. Ryan's phone buzzed in his pocket, probably Marcus from the warehouse, asking if he could cover someone's shift tomorrow. He ignored it. Sundays belonged to Liam, even if Monday's rent was short and Tuesday's electricity bill was overdue, especially then. The wind picked up and Ryan pulled his jacket tighter. It was the same jacket he'd worn for 5 years, frayed at the cuffs, missing a button. Sarah had bought it for him during better days, back when they'd thought they had forever, back before the cancer diagnosis, before the hospital bills that swallowed their savings, before the funeral that turned his life into a permanent before and after. He didn't think about her as much anymore. Not every hour anyway, just every day. Usually in the morning when he made coffee, or at night when he tucked Liam in and saw Sarah's eyes staring back at him from their son's face. "Dad, the water's getting closer." Liam's voice pulled him back to the present. The tide was indeed rising, each wave reaching a little farther up the beach, threatening the sandcastle's foundation. "Better build a moat," Ryan suggested. Liam dropped to his knees and began digging furiously with both hands, sand flying everywhere, tongue stuck out in concentration the way he always did when he was focused. Ryan smiled despite the exhaustion that lived permanently in his bones, the kind that came from working a day shift at the warehouse and a night shift driving for a rideshare company, from being both mother and father, from carrying the weight of a small person's entire world on shoulders that sometimes felt ready to collapse. But he wouldn't trade it. Not for anything. The beach was nearly empty now. An elderly couple walked hand in hand near the water, their footprints immediately erased by the surf. A jogger with headphones passed without looking up. 2 teenage girls took selfies near the pier, trying to capture the dramatic sky before the light disappeared completely. Ryan checked his watch. 20 more minutes, then they'd have to leave. Dinner tonight would be spaghetti again, the 3rd time this week, but Liam never complained. The kid had his mother's grace that way, her ability to find joy in simple things. "Dad! Dad!" The urgency in Liam's voice made Ryan's head snap up. His son was pointing toward the water, his small arm extended, his face pale. "There's someone! In the water!" Ryan's eyes followed the direction of Liam's finger. At first he saw nothing but waves, dark, churning, reflecting the dying light. Then he saw it. A hand. Breaking the surface for just a moment before disappearing again. Then nothing. Then another flash of something, maybe a head, maybe just foam. It was impossible to tell from this distance. But Liam had seen it, and some instinct in Ryan's gut, the same one that woke him up 30 seconds before Liam cried out from a nightmare, told him his son was right. Someone was out there. Someone was drowning. The thought formed and dissolved almost simultaneously as Ryan's body took over. He was on his feet before conscious decision kicked in, already running, his shoes flying off mid-stride because there was no time for anything except the desperate mathematics of drowning. Seconds counted, every hesitation could mean the difference between breathing and not. "Stay there!" he shouted back at Liam, not even sure if his son could hear him over the wind. The sand was cold and rough under his bare feet, then suddenly gone as his legs hit water. The shock of it, freezing, aggressive, angrier than he'd expected, almost stopped him. But he pushed forward, diving under an incoming wave, the salt burning his eyes and throat. When he surfaced, gasping, he couldn't see anything, just water everywhere, rising and falling, making it impossible to orient himself. For a second, panic touched the edges of his mind. What if he'd imagined it? What if there was nobody out here and he was drowning for nothing while his son watched from the beach? Then he saw the hand again, closer now, 20 feet away, maybe less. He swam harder than he'd ever swum in his life, fighting against the current that wanted to drag him parallel to the shore. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned. The ocean pulled at his clothes, his limbs, trying to claim him too. When he reached her, she was facing down in the water, barely floating. He grabbed her, turning her over, and got his first glimpse of her face, pale, lips blue, eyes closed, dark hair spread around her head like ink in water. Young, maybe early 30s. A stranger. She wasn't breathing. No, she had to be breathing. He hooked his arm under her chin, the way he'd learned in that lifeguard certification course he'd taken one summer during college. Back when he'd thought about becoming a marine biologist, before life had steered him toward warehouse management and survival. The swim back was hell. The ocean fought him for every inch, waves slamming into his face, filling his mouth with salt water. His arms felt like dead weight. The woman was heavier than she looked. Not because of her size, but because unconscious people become leaden, gravity doubling its claim on them. He went under twice. The second time, he thought he might not come back up. His vision darkened at the edges. His legs stopped kicking properly. For a moment, he had the strangest thought. This is how I die. Liam will watch me disappear, just like he watched his mother disappear. That thought galvanized him. He broke the surface with a roar of effort, kicking harder, swimming with everything he had left. The shore seemed impossibly far away, but he focused on one stroke at a time, one breath at a time, not letting himself think about the distance or the cold or the cramping in his legs. When his feet finally touched sand, he almost sobbed with relief. He dragged the woman onto the beach, laying her flat. Water poured from her mouth. She still wasn't breathing. "Call 911!" He shouted to anyone within earshot, not even looking to see if anyone was there. Then he started CPR. 30 compressions. His hands on her sternum, pushing hard, counting in his head the way the Red Cross instructor had taught him years ago. Her ribs felt fragile under his palms. He tried not to think about breaking them, tried to focus on the rhythm, on forcing her heart to remember how to beat. Tilt the head back. Pinch the nose. 2 rescue breaths. Nothing. 30 more compressions. Harder this time, desperation making him press deeper than he probably should. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, come on, come on." 2 more rescue breaths. She convulsed. Water erupted from her mouth as she turned her head, coughing violently, her whole body seizing with the effort to expel the ocean from her lungs. Ryan turned her on her side, supporting her as she vomited seawater onto the sand, each cough sounding like it might tear her apart. But she was breathing. She was alive. "Oh, thank God," someone said, and Ryan looked up to see that a small crowd had gathered. The elderly couple, the jogger, the teenage girls, all standing in a semicircle with expressions of shock and relief. "Ambulance is coming," the jogger said, lowering his phone. "I called them. 5 minutes out." Ryan nodded, unable to speak. Now that the adrenaline was fading, he realized he was shaking violently, his teeth chattering, his wet clothes plastered to his skin. The wind felt like knives. "Dad!" Liam crashed into him, small arms wrapping around his neck with enough force to nearly knock him over. Ryan held his son tight, feeling the rapid flutter of Liam's heartbeat against his chest. "You saved her," Liam whispered, his voice full of awe. "You saved that lady's life." Ryan looked down at the woman on the sand. She had stopped coughing and was breathing more steadily now, though her eyes remained closed. Her face was still pale, but color was slowly returning to her lips. She wore what looked like an expensive dress, now ruined by seawater and sand. No jewelry he could see, no obvious identification. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea if she'd jumped or fallen or been swimming and gotten caught by a riptide. He only knew that she'd needed help, and that he'd been there to give it. The paramedics arrived in a flurry of activity, equipment, questions, practiced efficiency. They wrapped the woman in thermal blankets, checked her vitals, asked Ryan what had happened. He answered as best he could, his voice sounding strange to his own ears, like it was coming from far away. One of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes and gray streaks in her dark hair, put a blanket around Ryan's shoulders. "You did good," she said. "Real good. Most people wouldn't have gone in. Current's dangerous today." Ryan just nodded. He felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. "We're taking her to County General," the paramedic continued. "You want to ride with us? Sometimes people like to follow up, make sure the person's okay." "I can't," Ryan said, glancing at Liam. "I've got my son." "Understood, but if you change your mind, ask for Jane Parker at the ER. I'll make sure they know you're the one who pulled her out." They loaded the woman into the ambulance. Just before they closed the doors, she stirred, her eyes fluttering open for just a moment. Even from a distance, Ryan could see they were an unusual color, gray-green, like the ocean itself. She looked directly at him, her gaze unfocused but somehow intense, before her eyes closed again. Then the ambulance pulled away, sirens fading into the distance. The crowd dispersed slowly, people drifting back to their own lives. The elderly couple squeezed Ryan's arm before leaving. The jogger gave him a thumbs up. The teenage girls actually applauded, which would have made Ryan laugh under other circumstances. Soon it was just him and Liam again, standing on the beach as the sun finally gave up and slipped below the horizon. "Can we go home now?" Liam asked quietly. "I'm cold." "Yeah, buddy, let's go home." They walked back to where they'd left their things. The sandcastle was gone, claimed by the rising tide as if it had never existed. Ryan gathered their towels, found his shoes half buried in sand. His hands were still shaking as he unlocked the car. The drive home was silent except for the heater blasting and the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. Liam fell asleep in his booster seat before they'd gone 2 miles, his head tilted at an angle that would make his neck hurt tomorrow. Ryan's apartment was in a building that had been affordable 20 years ago and was now just old. 3rd floor, no elevator, pipes that groaned every time someone showered. But it was clean and it was theirs, and the landlord didn't ask too many questions when rent was a few days late. He carried Liam upstairs, the kid didn't even stir, and tucked him into bed still wearing his sandy clothes. He'd give him a proper bath tomorrow. Tonight, they both just needed sleep. Ryan stood in his own bathroom, looking at himself in the mirror. His hair was still damp with seawater, sticking up in strange directions. There were dark circles under his eyes. He looked older than 32, worn down by the constant pressure of holding everything together. He peeled off his wet clothes and stepped into the shower, letting hot water wash away the salt and sand and bone-deep chill. He stood there longer than he should have, knowing it would add to the water bill but unable to make himself move. He kept seeing that hand breaking the surface, kept feeling that moment when he thought he wouldn't make it back. Kept hearing Liam's voice. "You saved her. You saved that lady's life." Had he? Or had he just delayed the inevitable? What if she'd tried to drown herself? What if he'd pulled her back from somewhere she wanted to go? No. He pushed that thought away. Nobody who was ready to die fought that hard to breathe again. He'd felt her body convulse with the effort to expel water, to take in air. Whatever had put her in that ocean, some part of her wanted to live. He finally turned off the shower and dried himself with a towel that had seen better days. His reflection in the steamed mirror was just a blur now, which somehow felt appropriate. In the kitchen, he discovered they were out of coffee. The milk in the fridge had expired 2 days ago. There was half a box of pasta, some wilted vegetables, and a jar of sauce that was mostly empty. He'd go to the discount grocery store tomorrow after work. Stretch $20 as far as it would go. Maybe pick up that extra shift Marcus had been asking about. His phone had 7 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. Probably journalists, he realized. Someone must have filmed the rescue, posted it online. That was how it worked now. Nothing stayed private. Every moment of drama became content, became clicks, became tomorrow's forgotten news. He turned his phone off without listening to the voicemails. In his bedroom, barely big enough for a double bed and a dresser, Ryan lay in the dark and listened to the building's night sounds. Mrs. Chen upstairs walking her endless pacing route. The couple next door having their weekly argument. Somewhere, a baby crying. He thought about Sarah. Wondered what she would have said about today. She'd always accused him of being too quick to help, too willing to jump in without thinking about consequences. "You've got a hero complex," she'd teased once, after he'd stopped to help a stranger change a tire in the rain. "I've got a human complex," he'd replied. "It's called giving a damn." She'd laughed then, stood on her toes to kiss him despite the rain soaking them both. "Promise me something," she'd said. "Promise me you'll never stop being this person, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs you something." He'd promised. He'd had no idea how much it would cost. The hospital bills from her cancer treatment had bankrupted them. He'd sold their house, their second car, most of their furniture. He'd worked every hour he could find, and it still hadn't been enough. In the end, all his effort, all his determination to help, to save, to fix, it hadn't mattered. She died anyway, and he'd been left with a son who needed him and a hole in his chest that never quite healed. But tonight, he'd saved someone. That had to count for something. Ryan closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept replaying the rescue in fragments. The cold shock of water, the weight of an unconscious person, the terrifying moment when he'd thought they'd both drown. The strange gray-green eyes looking at him from the stretcher. Who was she? Why had she been in the water? He'd probably never know. She'd recover, go back to her life, and he'd go back to his. Two strangers whose paths had crossed for 5 desperate minutes and would never intersect again. That was how the world worked. People came and went. Moments happened and ended. You saved who you could and learned to live with who you couldn't. Ryan finally fell asleep sometime after midnight, the ocean still roaring in his ears, salt water still burning in his lungs, still feeling the desperate rhythm of CPR compressions counting out the difference between life and death. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The next morning started the way Monday mornings always did. Too early, too rushed, and with Liam's announcement that he'd forgotten about a school project due today. "It's a poster about ocean animals," Liam explained through a mouthful of cereal. "Mrs. Rodriguez said we had to do it." "When did she assign this?" Ryan asked, already knowing the answer would not be yesterday. 2 weeks ago? Ryan closed his eyes and counted to 5. "Buddy, you have to tell me these things when they're assigned, not the morning they're due." "I forgot." "I know, but we've talked about this." Liam's bottom lip trembled, and Ryan's frustration immediately dissolved. The kid was 6. 6-year-olds forgot things. 6-year-olds who'd lost their mother forgot even more, their young minds trying to process grief they couldn't name while also remembering spelling words and lunchboxes and ocean animal posters. "Hey," Ryan said gently, crouching down to eye level. "It's okay. We'll figure it out. You've got what, 30 minutes before school?" Liam nodded, looking hopeful. "All right, you've got poster board from last time?" Another nod. "Then let's make the best ocean poster Mrs. Rodriguez has ever seen." 28 minutes later, armed with markers that were mostly dried out and magazine pictures hastily cut and glued, they had created something that could generously be described as enthusiastic. A dolphin was inexplicably the same size as a whale. The word ecosystem was misspelled. But it was done. And Liam was smiling again, and that was what mattered. Ryan dropped him at school with seconds to spare, watching through the car window as Liam ran across the playground, poster board flapping in the wind, shouting greetings to friends who shouted back. For just a moment, he looked like any other kid, carefree, unburdened, whole. Those moments made everything worthwhile. Ryan's warehouse shift started at 8. He clocked in with 2 minutes to spare, already feeling the fatigue from yesterday settling into his muscles. His supervisor, Marcus, gave him a look as he grabbed his scanner and headed to the floor. "Rough night?" Marcus asked. "Something like that." "You looked wrecked. You coming down with something?" "I'm fine." Marcus didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. They had a shipment of electronics to process before noon, and speculation about Ryan's health wasn't going to make the boxes move themselves. The work was mindless, which helped. Scan, verify, stage, repeat, hundreds of times. Thousands. His body went through the motions while his mind wandered, coming back again and again to yesterday. To the ocean. to the woman whose name he still didn't know. Lunchtime came and went. Ryan ate a peanut butter sandwich from his locker and drank water from the fountain. Around 2 p.m., Marcus appeared at his station again. "Hayes, someone's asking for you at the front office." Ryan frowned. "Who?" "Didn't say. Some woman. Professional looking." Ryan's first thought was debt collector. There were several companies that called regularly about Sarah's medical bills, despite him explaining repeatedly that you can't get blood from a stone, but they didn't usually show up in person. He made his way to the front office, still wearing his work gloves and reflective vest. The waiting area was small and utilitarian. A few plastic chairs, outdated magazines, a water cooler that had been empty for a month. The woman standing there didn't belong. She wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back in a sleek style that suggested both elegance and control. She was turned away, looking at something on her phone, but when she heard him enter, she turned. Gray-green eyes. The same eyes from yesterday, from the beach, from the back of the ambulance. Recognition hit them both simultaneously. "It's you," she said, and her voice was different than he'd expected, cultured, educated, with an accent he couldn't quite place. "British?" "No, something else, somewhere expensive." "You're okay," Ryan said stupidly, because what else was there to say? "Thanks to you." She took a step forward, and he noticed she moved carefully like someone still recovering. "I've been looking for you. Ryan Hayes." "How did you—" "The paramedics told me your name. Finding where you work took slightly longer, but not much." There was something unsettling about that, the casual way she'd tracked him down. But her expression was earnest, grateful even, so Ryan tried to shake off his discomfort. "You didn't need to come here," he said. "I'm just glad you're all right." "Just glad I'm all right." She repeated the words like they were foreign to her. "You saved my life. Most people would consider that worth at least a conversation. Most people would have done the same thing." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't have. The beach was empty. You had your child with you. The water was dangerous. You had every reason to stay safe, and you didn't." She paused. "I owe you my life. That's not a debt I take lightly." She reached into her designer bag and pulled out an envelope. Thick, expensive paper. She held it out to him. Ryan didn't take it. "I didn't save you for money," he said. The words hung in the air between them. She looked at him like he'd spoken in another language, her gray-green eyes searching his face for, what? Sarcasm? A joke? "I don't understand," she said finally. "What's to understand? Someone needed help. I helped. That's it." "That's—" She seemed to struggle with the concept. "That's not how the world works." "Maybe not your world." It came out harsher than he'd intended, and he saw something flicker in her expression, hurt, maybe, or surprise. Before he could apologize, Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Hayes breaks over in 2. We've got that priority shipment." "Right, sorry." Ryan looked back at the woman. "Look, I need to get back to work. I'm glad you're okay, really. But you don't owe me anything." He turned to leave. "Wait." Her voice stopped him. "Can I at least know your son's name? The boy on the beach?" Ryan hesitated. Something about this woman knowing anything more about his life felt dangerous, though he couldn't say why. "Liam," he said finally. She smiled, and it transformed her face completely, making her look younger, more real. "That's a beautiful name. Please tell him thank you for seeing me, for not looking away." Then she did something unexpected. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect that seemed almost formal. "My name is Victoria Lane," she said, "and whether you wanted me to or not, I will find a way to repay you." Before Ryan could respond, she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of expensive perfume and the envelope on the chair where she'd placed it when he'd refused to take it. Ryan stared at it for a long moment. Then he left it there and went back to work. The envelope stayed on that chair for 3 days. Ryan knew because Marcus mentioned it each morning, casually at first, then with growing curiosity, finally with outright suspicion that Ryan was somehow involved in something he shouldn't be. "Just throw it away," Ryan told him on the 3rd day. "You don't even want to know what's inside?" "No." Marcus picked up the envelope, held it to the light. "Feels thick. Could be cash, could be a check, could be—" "I don't care what it is." "Oh man, you're weird sometimes." But Marcus tossed the envelope in the trash, and that was the end of it. Except it wasn't. On Thursday evening, Ryan pulled into his apartment complex after picking up Liam from after-school care and found Victoria Lane sitting on the stairs leading to his building. She stood when she saw his car, smoothing her clothes. Jeans this time, expensive ones, and a cream sweater that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. "You've got to be kidding me," Ryan muttered. "Who's that?" Liam asked from the back seat, craning his neck to see. "Nobody. Just stay here for a minute, okay?" Ryan got out of the car and approached her with what he hoped was a discouraging expression. "How did you find where I live? Public records aren't very private." She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I know this is inappropriate. I know I should leave you alone, but I can't." "Why not?" "Because you won't let me repay you, and it's driving me insane." Despite himself, Ryan almost smiled. There was something refreshingly honest about her frustration. "Look," he said, trying to keep his voice level, "I appreciate the gesture, I do, but I'm not interested in money or gifts or whatever you think you owe me. I'm just trying to get through my day, get my kid fed and in bed, and wake up tomorrow to do it again. That's it. That's my life." "That's Dad!" Liam's voice carried from the car. "He saved you!" Victoria's attention shifted to the car, and her entire expression softened. She walked past Ryan before he could stop her, approaching the vehicle with careful steps. Liam had rolled down his window and was grinning at her with the unselfconscious enthusiasm only 6-year-olds possessed. "Hello, Liam," she said. "Your father told me your name." "You remember me?" "Of course I remember you. You're the one who saw me." "You're the one who told your father." Liam's grin somehow got wider. "I saw your hand. In the water. And I told Dad, and he ran really, really fast and jumped in, even though the waves were super big and scary." "That was very brave of you," Victoria said, "to speak up, to not look away." "Mrs. Rodriguez says if you see someone who needs help, you should always tell someone. That's what I did." "Mrs. Rodriguez is a wise woman." Ryan watched this exchange with growing unease. He didn't like how natural Victoria looked talking to his son, how easily Liam responded to her. It felt like something was shifting, some boundary being crossed that he couldn't quite name. "Liam, we need to go inside," Ryan said. "It's getting late." "Can she come for dinner?" Liam asked immediately. "We're having spaghetti." "No, she can't." "I would love to," Victoria said. Ryan stared at her. "Excuse me?" "If the invitation is genuine, I would be honored to join you for spaghetti." She looked directly at him, and there was something challenging in her gray-green eyes, something that said she knew exactly what she was doing. "Unless you're going to tell a 6-year-old that his guest isn't welcome." She had him cornered, and she knew it. "Fine," Ryan said tightly, "but it's just spaghetti, nothing fancy." "I didn't expect fancy." She had no idea. Ryan's apartment was a study in controlled chaos. Liam's toys occupied most of the living room floor. The kitchen counter was cluttered with dishes from this morning's rushed breakfast. The furniture was mismatched, bought secondhand or inherited from relatives who'd upgraded to something better. Victoria stepped inside and looked around with an expression Ryan couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry about the mess," he said, immediately hating himself for apologizing. This was his home. He didn't need to justify it to anyone. "It's not messy," Victoria said quietly. "It's lived in. There's a difference." Liam kicked off his shoes and immediately started showing Victoria his toys. A collection of action figures, a half-finished puzzle, a stuffed elephant named Mr. Trunk that had been Sarah's gift on Liam's 2nd birthday. Victoria listened to every word with apparently genuine interest, asking questions, admiring the elephant's floppy ears, helping Liam find a puzzle piece he'd been searching for. Ryan watched from the kitchen doorway, feeling something uncomfortable twist in his chest. It had been a long time since another adult had been in this space, especially a woman. His mother visited occasionally, but she lived 3 hours away and had her own life. Sarah's parents had stopped calling after the first year. Grief made people do strange things, and apparently forgiving their son-in-law for surviving when their daughter hadn't was more than they could manage. "Dad, can I show her my room?" "After dinner," Ryan said. "Go wash your hands." Liam ran off, and Ryan was left alone with Victoria in uncomfortable silence. "You didn't have to come here," Ryan said finally. "I know." "So why did you?" She turned to face him fully. Because I don't know how to let this go. Because I've never met someone who wanted nothing from me. Because she hesitated. Because I almost died, Ryan. And when I woke up in that hospital, the only thing I could remember clearly was your face. The only thing that felt real was that you'd cared enough to risk your life for a stranger. Anyone would have. Stop saying that. Her voice rose, then immediately softened. Sorry, but please stop pretending you're ordinary. Most people would have called 911 and waited. You didn't wait. You didn't hesitate. You just acted. My wife would have said I have a savior complex. The words slipped out before he could stop them. He saw Victoria's eyes flick to his left hand to the absent ring finger where a gold band used to sit before he'd sold it to pay for Liam's preschool. Your wife, Victoria repeated carefully. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't know her. It came out harsh, defensive, and Ryan immediately regretted his tone. But Victoria didn't flinch. You're right. I didn't. But I'm still sorry you lost her. Liam bounded back into the room, hands dripping water. I washed. Can we eat now? I'm starving. Dinner was surreal. Ryan boiled pasta while Victoria sat at their tiny kitchen table with Liam, listening to him explain the intricacies of first-grade social dynamics with the seriousness of a political analyst. Who sat with whom at lunch? Who got picked first for kickball? The ongoing drama of the classroom pet hamster who kept escaping his cage. His name is Houdini, Liam explained, because he's magic. That's a perfect name for an escape artist, Victoria said. Ryan drained the pasta, dumped it in a bowl with sauce from a jar, and brought it to the table with a bag of pre-shredded cheese and 3 mismatched plates. It's not much, he said. It's perfect, Victoria replied, and there was something in her voice that made Ryan think she actually meant it. They ate. Liam dominated the conversation, which was fine by Ryan. It meant he didn't have to make small talk, didn't have to explain himself or his life to this woman who seemed determined to... What? He still wasn't sure what she wanted from him. After dinner, Liam showed Victoria his room, a small space barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser, but decorated with his drawings and a mobile of planets that Sarah had hung when they'd first moved in. Victoria examined everything like she was in a museum, asking about the rocket ship drawing on the wall, admiring the collection of rocks Liam had found at the beach. This one's my favorite, Liam said, holding up a smooth gray stone. Because it looks like the moon. It does, Victoria agreed. May I? Liam handed it to her, and she turned it over in her hands with careful attention. You know what? She said. I think you're right. This could absolutely be a piece of the moon that fell to Earth a long time ago. Really? Well, probably not. But it's fun to imagine, isn't it? Liam nodded enthusiastically, taking the rock back and placing it reverently on his nightstand. Bath time came next. Ryan excused himself to supervise, leaving Victoria in the living room with a book from Liam's shelf, some picture book about dinosaurs. When he returned 20 minutes later with a pajama-clad Liam, he found her sitting on the couch, still reading, her expression soft in a way that made her look younger, more vulnerable. One more chapter, Liam pleaded, climbing onto the couch next to her. Liam, Ms. Lane probably needs to... I don't mind, Victoria said. If it's all right with you? It wasn't all right. None of this was all right. This woman was inserting herself into his life, into his son's life, and Ryan didn't know how to stop it without being cruel. But Liam was looking at him with those hopeful eyes, and Victoria was waiting with patient silence, and Ryan found himself nodding. 1 chapter, then bed. Victoria read with the kind of dramatic flair that delighted Liam. Different voices for different dinosaurs, roaring at appropriate moments, gasping when the T-Rex appeared. Liam laughed until he hiccuped, his small body leaning against her side like it was the most natural thing in the world. When the chapter ended, Liam yawned hugely. Bedtime, Ryan said firmly. Will you come back? Liam asked Victoria. To read more? Victoria glanced at Ryan, a question in her eyes. We'll see, Ryan said, which was parent code for probably not. After Liam was tucked in, a process involving 3 glasses of water, 2 trips to the bathroom, and 1 lengthy negotiation about whether stuffed animals counted as blankets, Ryan returned to the living room to find Victoria standing by the window, looking out at the parking lot below. "Thank you for dinner," she said without turning around. "It was just pasta." It was more than that. Now she did turn, and in the dim light of the single lamp, her face held an expression Ryan couldn't quite read. It was kindness, hospitality. "You didn't want me here, but you let me stay anyway because your son asked. That says a lot about who you are." "It doesn't say anything except that I'm too tired to argue with a 6-year-old. She smiled at that. "You sell yourself short. And you're too interested in a guy who pulled you out of the ocean. It's called hero worship. It'll wear off. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I was supposed to die that day," she said finally. "Not by choice. I didn't jump. I didn't try to end anything. But I was swimming alone, which was stupid, and I got caught in a riptide, and I was so tired, Ryan, so exhausted by everything that I just let go. I stopped fighting, and I would have drowned if you hadn't seen me. Liam saw you, but you saved me. You dragged me back from something I couldn't fight anymore." She paused. "And when I woke up in that hospital, I realized I'd been given something I didn't deserve, a second chance. And the person who gave it to me wanted nothing in return. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I'm not rare, I'm just a guy trying to get by. You're more than that. You don't know me. Then let me." The words hung between them like a challenge. Ryan shook his head. "This is a bad idea. You and me, we're from different worlds. You've got..." He gestured vaguely at her clothes, her bearing, the intangible aura of wealth that clung to her. "Whatever you've got, and I've got bills I can't pay and a job that barely covers rent. What exactly do you think is going to happen here?" "I think," Victoria said carefully, "that I would like to have dinner with you again. Not your son, although he's wonderful. You. A real dinner where we talk like adults." "I don't have time for dating. I'm not asking for dating, I'm asking for conversation." "Why?" "Because you're interesting." Ryan actually laughed at that. A short, bitter sound. "I'm the least interesting person you'll ever meet. I go to work, I pick up my kid, I make dinner, I go to bed, and I do it all again the next day. That's my life. There's nothing interesting about it." "You say that like routine is boring, like predictability is weakness." Victoria took a step closer. "But I've spent my entire life around people who claim to be interesting, who travel to exotic places and collect experiences like trophies and never stop talking about how unique they are. And you know what? Most of them are empty. They're performing interest, not living it. And you think I'm different? I know you are. You ran into the ocean without thinking about cameras or credit or what you'd get out of it. You refused money because the idea of being paid for decency offends you. You work yourself to exhaustion for your son. You make spaghetti from a jar and call it dinner and somehow make it feel like more than meals I've had at 5-star restaurants." She paused. "So yes, I think you're different, and I think you're scared that if you let me get close enough, I'll see all the cracks you're trying to hide." Ryan felt something crack in his chest at those words. Not breaking, exactly, but shifting, like ice beginning to thaw. "You should go," he said quietly. Victoria nodded, accepting the dismissal with grace. She gathered her bag, slipped on her shoes. At the door, she paused. "I'm not going to stop," she said. "I'm not good at giving up once I've decided I want something, so you should know that now." "What do you want?" "To know you. To understand what kind of man runs into fire or water for strangers. To maybe be someone you'd run toward instead of away from." She smiled, sad and hopeful at once. "But mostly, I just want to see you again. Coffee, dinner, a conversation in a park while our kids play. I don't care, I don't want this to be the end." "My kid, singular." "Right, sorry." She'd looked genuinely chagrined. "I don't have children, obviously. I just meant..." "I know what you meant." Silence stretched between them, full of things neither could quite say. "Good night, Ryan." "Good night." She left and Ryan closed the door behind her, leaning against it like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He didn't see her for a week after that. Life returned to its normal rhythm. Work, Liam, exhaustion, repeat. But something had shifted, some awareness that hadn't existed before. Ryan found himself noticing the absence of things. The apartment felt quieter. Dinner felt lonelier, even with Liam chattering beside him. The evenings stretched longer. "When is Victoria coming back?" Liam asked on the fifth day. "I don't know, buddy." "Did you make her mad?" "No, she's just busy with her own life." "But she said she'd read more dinosaurs." "Sometimes adults say things they don't mean." Liam considered this with 6-year-old wisdom. "That's dumb." "Yeah," Ryan agreed. "It kind of is." On Saturday, Ryan took Liam to the grocery store, a weekly ritual that involved carefully calculated spending and negotiations over which cereal was acceptable. They were in the produce section, Liam campaigning for grapes they couldn't afford, when Ryan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him step away from the cart and accept the call. "Ryan Hayes?" A woman's voice, professional, crisp. "Speaking." "This is Jennifer Chen from Portland Elementary. I'm calling about Liam's tuition for the after-school program." Ryan's stomach dropped. He'd known this call was coming. The bill was 2 months overdue. "I'm working on it. I'll have the money by—" "Actually, Mr. Hayes, I'm calling to let you know the account has been paid in full for the entire year." Ryan froze. "What?" "An anonymous donor covered the balance and prepaid through June. I wanted to confirm the payment and make sure you were aware." "Who? When?" "The donation came through yesterday. The donor requested anonymity, so I can't provide details. But your account is current, and Liam's enrollment is secure." Ryan barely heard the rest of the conversation. He mumbled something about appreciation and ended the call in a daze. He knew exactly who had paid, and he didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. "Dad, can we get the grapes?" Ryan looked down at his son, at the hopeful expression that expected so little and deserved so much. "Yeah," he said, "we can get the grapes." That night, after Liam was asleep, Ryan found himself staring at his phone, Victoria's business card sitting on the counter. She'd left it during that first visit to the warehouse, and he'd kept it despite telling himself he'd throw it away. He dialed before he could change his mind. She answered on the second ring. "Ryan." Not a question. Like she'd been waiting. "You can't do that," he said without preamble. "Do what?" "You know what, the after-school program. The payment." "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." A pause. Then, "Anonymous means anonymous, Ryan. It doesn't count as anonymous when there's only one person it could possibly be." "Prove it." He could hear the smile in her voice, and it made him simultaneously want to laugh and throw the phone across the room. "Victoria, you said you didn't want money. I respected that. But you never said I couldn't help Liam. That's semantics." "That's the truth. I didn't do it for you. I did it for a 6-year-old who deserves stability." Ryan closed his eyes, fighting against emotions he didn't want to name. "You had no right." "You're correct. I had no right, and I'm not sorry." Her voice softened. "Ryan, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Letting it sit in accounts while a child's education is at risk would be obscene. So I paid a bill, that's all." "That's not all." "No," she agreed quietly. "It's not. Because now you're talking to me, and that's what I really wanted." Despite everything, Ryan felt a smile tugging at his lips. "You're manipulative. I prefer strategically persistent." "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the moment you refused the envelope. I figured if you wouldn't take help directly, I'd have to be creative." "And if I demand you stop?" "Then I'll stop. But I won't take back what's already done. Liam's tuition is paid. That doesn't change." Ryan sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Accept help. Let people in. I've been on my own for 3 years, Liam and me against the world. It's easier that way." "Easier," Victoria said, "but not better." "You sound very sure of that." "I am. Because I've lived my entire life being on my own too. And it's lonely as hell." The raw honesty in her voice surprised him. "Tell me about yourself," Ryan said. "Real things, not whatever public version exists." "What do you want to know?" Why were you swimming alone that day? Silence. He thought maybe he'd pushed too far, asked for something she wasn't willing to give. Then, because I just found out someone I trusted had betrayed me, stolen from me, and I needed to clear my head, so I went swimming, alone. Which was stupid, and I got caught in the current, and I was so angry and so tired that I just gave up fighting for a moment, just a moment. But you fought when I got there, because you made me remember that giving up was a choice, and I don't like making choices while angry. Ryan thought about that. The person who betrayed you, did you handle it? Lawyers are handling it. Money will be recovered. Damages will be paid. Justice will be served. She paused. But trust isn't something you can recover through litigation. No, it's not. They sat in companionable silence, connected by phone lines and something neither could quite name. Ryan, Victoria said finally, can I ask you something? Sure. When you pulled me out of the water, what were you thinking? He didn't have to think about his answer. I was thinking that my son was watching, and I needed him to see that when someone needs help, you help. Even if it's hard, even if it's scary, because that's what good people do. Is that what your wife taught you? That's what my wife reminded me I already knew. Another pause, then, I'd like to meet her, if I could. She would have liked you, Ryan said, surprised to find it was true. She would have called you stubborn and overachieving and probably would have tried to set you up with her single friends. Victoria laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I would have liked her too. They talked for another hour, about nothing important and everything important, about Liam's obsession with dinosaurs and Victoria's childhood dream of being an astronaut, about Sarah's last good days and Victoria's first bad business decision, about the weight of responsibility and the fear of failing people who depended on you. When they finally hung up, Ryan felt lighter than he had in months, maybe years. And when Victoria showed up at his apartment the next afternoon with a bag of groceries she claimed she'd accidentally bought too much of, and Liam's face lit up like Christmas morning, Ryan didn't send her away. He let her in. She came back the following Tuesday with books for Liam. Thursday, she brought takeout when Ryan mentioned he'd worked a double shift. Saturday morning, she appeared with coffee and pastries, settling onto his worn couch like she'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. Ryan told himself he should stop this. Each visit was a small invasion, a gentle breach of the walls he'd built around his life. But Liam's laughter had become more frequent, and the apartment felt less empty, and Ryan was tired of being strong alone. Tell me about your company, he said one evening while Liam played with action figures on the floor. Victoria had just finished washing dishes, something she did without asking, like it was the most natural thing in the world. It's boring, she said, drying her hands on a towel. Try me. Lane Global Industries. We started in commercial real estate, expanded into sustainable development, then tech infrastructure. My grandfather built it from nothing. My father tripled its size. I've been trying not to destroy their legacy. That's a lot of pressure. You have no idea. She sat down across from him. Every decision I make affects thousands of people. Employees, investors, communities. One wrong move, and I'm not just failing myself, I'm failing everyone who depends on the company. Sounds lonely. It is. She looked at him directly. That's why I was swimming alone that day, because I have 100 people around me constantly, and I'm still completely isolated. No one sees me, Ryan. They see my position, my bank account, my last name, but not me. I see you. The words came out softer than he'd intended, more honest than he'd meant to be. Victoria's expression shifted into something vulnerable. I know. That's why I keep coming back. Liam chose that moment to crash his dinosaur into his spaceship with explosive sound effects, breaking the tension. Victoria laughed and the moment passed, but something had been acknowledged that couldn't be taken back. The week slipped into a pattern. Victoria would visit 2, sometimes 3 times a week. She never stayed long, an hour or 2 at most, but those hours began to feel essential, like breathing. She taught Liam card games and listened to Ryan talk about his day with attention that felt rare and precious. She never mentioned her wealth, never made Ryan feel inadequate for the things he couldn't provide. But the disparity was always there, humming beneath every interaction. It became impossible to ignore the day Marcus cornered Ryan during lunch break, phone in hand, expression somewhere between shock and accusation. Dude! Marcus thrust the phone at Ryan's face. Is this the woman who came looking for you? Ryan looked at the screen. It was a news article from a business website. The headline read, Victoria Lane, CEO of Lane Global Industries, announces $500 million sustainability initiative. The photo showed Victoria at a podium wearing a designer suit, looking powerful and untouchable, and nothing like the woman who sat on his couch reading dinosaur books to his son. Maybe? Ryan said, trying to sound uncertain. Maybe? Marcus's voice climbed an octave. Ryan, that's Victoria Lane, the Victoria Lane. She's on Forbes lists. She owns half the downtown skyline. And she was here, looking for you. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Ryan didn't have an answer. He'd been deliberately not thinking about who Victoria was outside his apartment, not asking questions that would force him to confront the reality of their situation. I pulled her out of the ocean, Ryan said finally. She wanted to say thank you, that's all. Marcus stared at him like he'd grown a second head. That's all? Man, do you have any idea what people would do for 5 minutes of that woman's time? She could change your entire life with a phone call. I don't want my life changed. You're living paycheck to paycheck in a third-floor walk-up. Yes, you do. But that was the thing. Ryan didn't. Or at least, he didn't want it changed that way, with money and influence and everything that came with Victoria's world. Because he'd learned the hard way that money couldn't save what mattered. It couldn't cure cancer or bring back the dead or fill the hole left by losing someone you loved. That night, when Victoria came by with Chinese food she claimed was extra from a business dinner, Ryan asked the question he'd been avoiding. Why don't you tell people who you are? Victoria paused mid-bite, chopsticks frozen halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? When you're here, with us, you never mention your company, your money, any of it. It's like you're pretending to be someone else. I'm not pretending. She gestured around the small apartment. This is the only place I get to be myself. No performance, no expectations, just Victoria. But that's not really yourself either, is it? You're leaving out half of who you are. She set down her chopsticks carefully. Would it change things? If we talked about my work, my wealth, all of it? I don't know, maybe. That's why I don't mention it. Her voice was quiet but firm. Because I finally found someone who doesn't see me as a bank account or a networking opportunity. And I'm selfish enough to want to keep it that way. That's not fair to me. I know. She looked miserable. You're right. I'm being unfair. But I'm also terrified that the moment you really understand the scope of what my life is like, you'll realize we don't make sense. We might not make sense anyway. I know that too. They sat in uncomfortable silence while Liam, oblivious, colored at the coffee table with crayons Victoria had brought 2 weeks ago. My grandfather used to say that wealth is a test, Victoria said eventually. It shows you who people really are. Most fail. They either want something from you or they resent you for having it. Very few can just be present, without agenda. And you think that's what I'm doing? I think you're the first person in a decade who's told me no, who's refused my money, questioned my motives, made me work for your attention. She smiled sadly. Do you know how rare that is? I'm not trying to be rare. I'm trying to protect my son. From me, from instability, from people who come and go, from getting attached to someone who might disappear. The words hung heavy between them. Is that what you think I'll do? Victoria asked. I don't know what you'll do. That's the problem. Before Victoria could respond, Liam looked up from his coloring. Are you and Dad fighting? No, sweetheart, Victoria said immediately. We're just talking. It sounds like fighting. Ryan sighed. Sometimes adults have hard conversations. That doesn't mean we're angry at each other. Mom used to say that too before she got sick. The simple statement cut through the tension like a blade. Ryan saw Victoria's expression crumble, saw her understand in that moment exactly what stakes she was playing with. This wasn't just about her and Ryan. There was a small boy who'd already lost one important person, and letting him get attached to someone who might leave was cruel. Liam's right, Victoria said quietly. I should go. She gathered her things quickly, professionally, all warmth evaporated from her movements. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, she said, I'm not going anywhere, but I understand if you need space to figure out whether you believe that. She left before Ryan could respond. The next week was strange. Victoria didn't visit, didn't call. Ryan told himself it was for the best, that the clean break was healthier for everyone. But Liam asked about her every day, and the apartment felt hollow in a way it hadn't before she'd started filling it with her presence. On Friday evening, Ryan picked Liam up from after-school care to find his son clutching a flyer with barely contained excitement. Dad, there's a science fair next month. Can I do it, please? Ryan took the flyer. The school's annual science fair, open to all grades. Projects due in 4 weeks. Parents were encouraged to assist. What would you want to do your project on? Ryan asked. Ocean stuff, because you saved Victoria from the ocean, and I want to learn about riptides and currents and why the water is dangerous. Of course. Of course his project would circle back to that day on the beach. Okay, Ryan said. We can do that. Can Victoria help? She's really smart. I don't think... Please? She knows lots of stuff. Ryan thought about saying no, about maintaining the distance he knew was smart, but looking at his son's hopeful face, he couldn't. I'll ask her, he conceded. He texted Victoria that night. Simple, straightforward. Liam wants you to help with his science fair project. Ocean currents. Are you interested? Her response came 30 seconds later. I would be honored. When should I come over? They settled on Sunday afternoon. Ryan spent Saturday cleaning the apartment more thoroughly than strictly necessary, then felt stupid for caring whether Victoria noticed. She arrived with poster board, markers, and a stack of library books about oceanography that must have cost her a special trip. I wasn't sure what materials you'd have, she explained, looking almost nervous. This is perfect, Ryan said. Thank you. They spread out on the living room floor, Liam between them, and began planning the project. Victoria explained riptides with clear, simple language that made complex concepts accessible. She drew diagrams, answered questions, praised Liam's ideas without condescension. Ryan watched her with his son and felt something shift in his chest. Not just attraction, though that was certainly there, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe, of someone who genuinely cared about Liam, who saw him as a person worth her time and attention. You're good at this, Ryan said during a break while Liam ran to the bathroom. At what? Teaching, explaining things, being present. Victoria looked surprised. I've never thought of myself as particularly good with children. Well, you are. Liam adores you. The feeling is mutual. She hesitated. I meant what I said, Ryan, about not going anywhere. I know it's hard to trust that, given your history, but I'm not Sarah. I know you're not. And I'm not going to get sick and leave you. You can't promise that. No, she agreed, but I can promise that I'm not entering this lightly, whatever this is. What is this? This question had been building for weeks. Now it sat between them, unavoidable. I don't know, Victoria said honestly, but I know I think about you constantly. I know I plan my week around when I might see you. I know that your opinion matters to me more than most people's. And I know, she paused, choosing her words carefully, that I haven't felt this alive in years. Victoria, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. Liam's footsteps thundered back down the hall, and the moment dissolved. But Ryan couldn't stop thinking about her words for the rest of the afternoon. The science fair project consumed the next 3 weeks. Victoria came over regularly, helping Liam build a model demonstrating ocean currents, rehearsing his presentation, teaching him about tidal forces and water safety. She never talked about her company or her wealth, but Ryan noticed things anyway. The way she checked her phone constantly, the expensive cars that occasionally dropped her off, the tired shadows under her eyes that suggested late nights and early mornings. You're doing too much, Ryan said one evening after Liam had gone to bed. What do you mean? Coming here? Helping with the project. You've got a company to run. I have excellent people who handle things when I'm not there. But you should be there. Why? So I can attend another pointless meeting or approve another proposal I don't care about? She shook her head. This matters more. A 6-year-old science project? No, this. She gestured between them. You, Liam, feeling like I'm part of something real instead of just playing a role in other people's expectations. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. The science fair arrived on a Thursday evening in early December. Ryan left work early, picked up Liam, and headed to the school gymnasium, where tables were set up in neat rows and proud parents milled around with cameras. Victoria had promised to meet them there. Ryan told himself it didn't matter whether she showed up, that they'd be fine either way. But Liam kept scanning the crowd, looking for her, and Ryan's own chest felt tight with an anticipation he didn't want to examine too closely. They were setting up Liam's display when Ryan noticed the shift in the room's energy. Conversations dropped off. Heads turned, phones came out. Victoria had arrived. She wore a tailored navy suit, her hair pulled back, every inch the CEO. But her smile when she spotted Liam was pure and genuine, transforming her face into something warm and approachable. "Sorry I'm late," she said, reaching them. "Meeting ran over." "You came!" Liam practically vibrated with excitement. "Of course I came. I wouldn't miss this." But people were staring, whispering. Ryan saw phones angling their direction, capturing photos or video. A man in an expensive suit appeared at Victoria's elbow. Security, Ryan realized, though he'd tried to blend in. "Ms. Lane," the man said quietly, "we weren't informed you'd be attending this event." The title hit Ryan like a physical blow. Miss Lane. Not Victoria. Not the woman who washed his dishes and read to his son. But Victoria Lane, CEO, billionaire, someone so far removed from his world that the distance felt suddenly insurmountable. Victoria turned to Ryan, her composure cracking for the first time since he'd known her. "I can explain. You run Lane Global Industries," Ryan said flatly. "Yes." "The company that owns half the downtown skyline." "Yes." "You're a billionaire." "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. Ryan stepped back, confusion and hurt, and a strange sense of betrayal rising in his chest. "This whole time?" "I didn't lie about who I am," Victoria said quickly. "I just wanted someone to see me, not my title, not my money, just me." But Ryan couldn't process that right now. All he could see was the gulf between them, private jets and boardrooms and headlines versus his third-floor walk-up, and second-hand shoes and constant struggle to make rent. She'd been playing house with his life, pretending to be normal, while all along he didn't even know what she'd been. "Dad?" Liam's small voice cut through his spiral. "What's wrong?" Ryan looked down at his son, saw the confusion and worry, and realized they were making a scene. Other parents were openly staring now. The security guard looked tense. "Nothing's wrong, buddy," Ryan said, forcing his voice steady. "Ms. Lane just needs to go take care of some business." But the science fair?" "I'm sure she's very busy." Victoria flinched like he'd struck her. "Ryan, please, can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about." He kept his voice low, aware of their audience. "You're clearly not who I thought you were." "I'm exactly who you thought I was. The money doesn't change that." "The money changes everything." He turned away from her, focusing on Liam's display, adjusting elements that didn't need adjusting. Behind him, he heard Victoria say something to her security guard, heard the rustle of expensive fabric as she moved. "Liam," her voice was thick with emotion, "your project is wonderful. You should be very proud." "Aren't you staying?" Liam asked, and the hope in his voice made Ryan's chest ache. "I can't, sweetheart. I'm sorry." Then she was gone, heels clicking on gymnasium floor, leaving behind whispers and speculation and a 6-year-old who didn't understand why his friend had suddenly disappeared. The rest of the science fair passed in a blur. Liam presented his project to the judges, answered their questions, earned a blue ribbon for first place in his grade level. He smiled and accepted congratulations, but Ryan could see the confusion in his eyes, the questions he was too young to articulate. In the car on the way home, Liam finally asked, "Did Victoria do something bad?" "No, buddy, she didn't do anything bad." "Then why were you mad at her?" "How did you explain complicated adult emotions to a 6-year-old? How did you articulate the feeling of discovering someone you'd been getting close to had been hiding something fundamental about themselves?" "I wasn't mad," Ryan said finally. "I was surprised. Victoria has a really important job, and I didn't know about it. Sometimes surprises are hard for adults." "But she's still Victoria, right?" She's still our friend? I don't know. That night after Liam was asleep, Ryan sat alone in his dark living room and stared at his phone. Victoria had called 6 times, left 3 voicemails. He hadn't listened to any of them. His phone buzzed with a text. Please let me explain, not for me, for Liam. He deserves better than being collateral damage in my mistakes. Ryan stared at the message for a long time. She was right. Liam didn't deserve this. But what was Ryan supposed to do? Welcome her back like nothing had changed? Pretend the revelation of her wealth didn't fundamentally alter the dynamic between them? Another text. I understand if you don't want to see me, but at least read this. Please. A link appeared. Ryan clicked it despite himself. It opened to an article from a business journal dated 2 years ago. The headline read, Victoria Lane takes over family empire after father's sudden death. The article detailed how Victoria, at 31, had assumed control of Lane Global Industries following her father's heart attack. How she'd been thrust into leadership despite having planned a different career. How she'd spent the past 2 years trying to honor her father's legacy while modernizing the company, facing resistance from board members who thought she was too young, too inexperienced, too female. There were quotes from industry insiders calling her cold, calculating, all business. A separate sidebar detailed her net worth, her properties, her investments. The numbers were staggering, almost abstract in their enormity. But what caught Ryan's attention was a single line near the end. When asked about her personal life, Lane declined to comment, noting only that success often comes at the cost of genuine connection. His phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. This time, he answered. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I should have told you. I should have been honest from the start. Why weren't you? Because every single person in my life wants something from me, Ryan. Money, access, connections. My employees want job security. Investors want returns. The board wants me to be my father, and the people I thought were friends turned out to be networking contacts. She paused, and he heard her take a shaky breath. But you didn't want anything. You saved my life and refused payment. You let me into your home without knowing who I was. You treated me like a person, not a portfolio. And I was so desperate for that, I convinced myself it was okay to keep hiding who I am. But it wasn't okay. No, it wasn't, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Another pause. But Ryan, I need you to understand something. The woman who sits on your couch and reads to Liam and washes your dishes, that's me. The real me. Not the version who sits in boardrooms and signs contracts. That Victoria is a role I play. But with you, I get to just be. You can't separate yourself like that. You are both people, the CEO and the woman on my couch. And I don't know if I can handle the CEO version. Why not? Because I have nothing to offer someone like you. I live paycheck to paycheck. I drive a car that's one breakdown from dead. My biggest accomplishment this year was making Liam's rent-controlled tuition. What could I possibly give you that you can't buy yourself? Everything. Her voice broke on the word. You give me everything that money can't buy. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see me as Victoria, not Victoria Lane. You and Liam make me feel like I'm part of something that matters. Something real. And I would give up every dollar, every property, every stock option to keep feeling that way. Ryan closed his eyes, trying to process her words against the chaos in his head. I don't fit in your world, he said quietly. Then don't fit. Be exactly who you are. That's all I want. You say that now, but what happens when you need to attend some gala or business dinner or whatever billionaires do, and I'm standing there in my 5-year-old suit, not knowing which fork to use? Then you'll be the most genuine person in the room, and I'll be grateful you're there. Victoria, I love you. The word stopped Ryan cold. What? I love you. I'm in love with you. I've been falling for weeks, and I didn't want to say it because I knew it would make everything more complicated. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I love that you ran into the ocean without hesitation. I love that you make spaghetti from a jar and call it dinner. I love that you're an amazing father. I love that you told me no and made me earn your trust. I love, her voice caught, I love who I am when I'm with you. Ryan felt tears burning his eyes and didn't try to stop them. This is insane, he said. We barely know each other. I know everything that matters, And if you need more time, I'll wait. If you need space, I'll give it to you. But please don't shut me out because you're scared. I'm scared too, Ryan. Terrified. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. In the background, Ryan could hear Liam stirring, probably having one of his bad dreams. He needed to go check on his son, needed to think, needed time to process everything Victoria had just said. I need to go, he said. Okay, but Victoria? Yes? I don't know what I feel yet, but I know I miss you, and I know Liam does too. So maybe we can talk. Tomorrow. In person. He heard her exhale, a sound of relief and hope. Tomorrow. Yes. Thank you. After they hung up, Ryan sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about wealth and poverty, about risk and safety, about the terrifying possibility of opening his heart again, only to have it broken. But mostly, he thought about a woman who'd given him her vulnerability, her honesty, her love. And he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was brave enough to give her the same. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. Ryan didn't sleep that night. He checked on Liam twice, watched his son's chest rise and fall with the peaceful rhythm of childhood sleep, and envied him the simplicity of his dreams. By morning, Ryan had consumed an entire pot of coffee and still felt no closer to clarity. Victoria arrived at 10, as promised. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. No security detail, no expensive car idling at the curb, just Victoria, looking nervous and hopeful and heartbreakingly real. Hi, she said from the doorway. Hi. An awkward silence stretched between them. Finally, Ryan stepped aside. Come in. Liam's at my mom's for the day. I thought we should talk alone. Victoria nodded, entering the apartment she'd visited so many times before. But everything felt different now, charged with the weight of unspoken truths and impossible possibilities. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a careful distance between them. I've been thinking about what you said last night, Ryan began. About loving me. Victoria tensed but didn't look away. I meant it. I know you did. That's what scares me. He ran his hands through his hair, searching for the right words. When Sarah got sick, I had to watch her fade away piece by piece, and I was powerless to stop it. All the love in the world couldn't save her. All my determination, all my effort, none of it mattered in the end. Ryan, let me finish, please. He took a breath. After she died, I promised myself I wouldn't let Liam get attached to anyone who might leave. It was safer that way. Simpler. Just the two of us against the world. He finally met her eyes. But then you showed up, and you kept showing up. And somewhere along the way, I started to care about you too. Not because you saved yourself from drowning, or because you're generous, or even because you're beautiful, but because you make me feel like maybe I don't have to do everything alone. Victoria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. But I need to know something, Ryan continued, and I need you to be completely honest. Is this real for you, or is it just different, exciting because it's not your usual world? It's real. Her voice was fierce, certain. Ryan, I've dated men who checked every box society says I should want. Successful, educated, from the right families. And every single one of them bored me to tears because they only saw what I represented. My wealth, my connections, my name. You're the first person in my entire adult life who's seen me and not what I can do for them. How do I know that's not just the novelty talking? How do I know 6 months from now you won't wake up and realize you've been slumming it with a warehouse worker? Victoria flinched. Is that really what you think of yourself? It's what I am. No. She moved closer, closing the distance between them. You're a father who works 2 jobs to give his son a good life. You're someone who runs into dangerous water to save strangers. You're a man with more integrity in his little finger than most people I know possess in their entire bodies. That's who you are, Ryan, and if you can't see it, then I'll spend however long it takes making sure you do. Ryan felt something crack in his chest, some final wall he'd been holding on to. I'm scared. I know, so am I. What if this doesn't work? What if it does? She reached for his hand, tentative, giving him the chance to pull away. He didn't. I can't promise perfect. I can't promise easy. But I can promise that I will show up every day and choose you. Choose us. Even when it's hard. especially when it's hard. Ryan looked down at their joined hands. Hers was soft, manicured, decorated with a simple silver ring. His was calloused, scarred from years of manual labor, rough around the edges. They didn't match. They shouldn't work. But somehow, they did. There are going to be complications, Ryan said quietly. Your world and mine, they're not compatible. Then we'll build a new world, one that's ours. Victoria, I don't know how to navigate your life. The business dinners, the galas, the board meetings. I'll embarrass you. You could never embarrass me. She squeezed his hand. But I understand your concern. So here's what I propose. You come to one event with me. Just one. See what that world is actually like. And if you hate it, if you decide it's too much, I'll never ask again. And what about your work? Your company? What about it? You can't just abandon your responsibilities to play house with me and Liam. Victoria's expression turned thoughtful. You're right. I can't abandon my responsibilities, but I can restructure them, delegate more, set better boundaries. My father died because he let the company consume him completely. He worked 18-hour days, sacrificed his health, his relationships, everything. I won't make the same mistake. Your board will fight you on that. Let them. I'm the majority shareholder. They can complain all they want, but ultimately, I make the decisions. She paused. Besides, I've realized something these past few weeks. The company will survive whether I micromanage every detail or not. But what we have, this thing between us, that's fragile. That requires actual attention and care. And I'd rather invest in something real than in quarterly earnings reports. Ryan studied her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. He found none. One event, he said finally. I'll try one event. Victoria's smile could have lit the entire city. Thank you. That's all I ask. When? Next Saturday. It's the annual charity gala for the Children's Hospital. Black tie, lots of wealthy people pretending to care about philanthropy. But the cause is genuine, and the kids actually benefit. She hesitated. We don't have to stay the whole time. And if you're uncomfortable, we can leave immediately. I don't own a tuxedo. I'll take care of it. Ryan started to protest, then stopped. He needed to pick his battles, and arguing about formal wear seemed petty in the grand scheme of things. Fine, but nothing too expensive. Define expensive. Victoria. I'm kidding, mostly. She grinned, then sobered. Can I ask you something? Sure. Last night, before we hung up, you said you didn't know what you felt yet. Do you know now? Ryan took his time answering, wanting to get it right. I know that when you're not here, the apartment feels empty. I know that Liam lights up when you visit. I know that you make me laugh and challenge me and frustrate me in equal measure. And I know, he met her eyes directly, that I'm terrified of how much I care about you, because caring means risking loss, and I've already lost so much. I can't promise I'll never leave, Victoria said softly. None of us can promise that. Life is uncertain, but I can promise that I won't leave by choice. I won't walk away because things get hard or inconvenient or complicated. I'm all in, Ryan, completely. He believed her. Against all logic, despite all the reasons he should protect himself, he believed her. I'm all in too, he said, but we take this slow, for Liam's sake. However slow you need, you eat. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, still holding hands, the weight of their confession settling around them like snow. I should probably tell you, Victoria said eventually, that the media attention might get intense. Once people realize we're together. We're together? She blushed, actually blushed. I mean, if you want to be, I'm assuming. Am I assuming too much? Ryan laughed, the sound surprising both of them. No, you're not assuming too much. We haven't exactly defined anything. Do we need to? I don't know. I haven't dated anyone since Sarah. I don't know how this works anymore. Neither have I. Dated seriously, I mean. So we'll figure it out together. Ryan squeezed her hand. I can work with that. The next week passed in a strange blur of normalcy punctuated by surreal moments. Victoria came for dinner Tuesday night, helping Liam with his math homework while Ryan cooked. Thursday she brought takeout, and they watched a movie after Liam went to bed, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Friday evening she called just to talk, and they spent 2 hours on the phone discussing everything from Liam's upcoming parent-teacher conference to Victoria's frustrations with a stubborn board member. It felt domestic, real, and terrifying in its simplicity. Saturday arrived too quickly. Victoria had arranged for a stylist to meet Ryan at a boutique downtown, where he was fitted for a tuxedo that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He tried not to think about it, tried to just accept the gift gracefully, but when he caught sight of the price tag, accidentally, while the tailor was pinning the hem, he felt physically ill. "Stop thinking about the cost," Victoria said from behind him. She'd appeared silently, watching him examine himself in the three-way mirror. "I can't help it. Think of it as an investment. You'll wear this to every formal event from now on." "I don't go to formal events. You will now, if you stay with me." She stepped closer, adjusting his bow tie with practiced fingers. "You look handsome, by the way." Ryan studied his reflection. The tuxedo fit perfectly, transforming him into someone he barely recognized, someone who might actually belong in Victoria's world. Except he didn't. Not really. "Hey!" Victoria turned his face toward her, away from the mirror. "I can see you spiraling. Talk to me." This isn't me, Victoria. This person in the expensive suit, going to charity galas. That's not who I am." "The suit doesn't change who you are. You're still you. You're still the man who makes spaghetti from a jar and reads bedtime stories and works himself to exhaustion for his son. The tuxedo is just clothes." "Easy for you to say. You've been wearing designer clothes your whole life." "Actually, I grew up in hand-me-downs and thrift store finds." At Ryan's surprised expression, she continued, "My grandfather built the company from nothing, remember? He didn't have money until I was already in middle school, and my father never forgot where he came from. He made sure I didn't either." Ryan hadn't known that, hadn't thought to ask about her childhood, her history. He'd been so focused on the gulf between their current situations that he'd forgotten everyone had a beginning. "So you understand," he said, "what it's like to not fit in." "Better than you might think. The difference is, I learned to fake it until I made it." "You don't have to fake anything, Ryan. Just be yourself. That's all anyone worth impressing will care about." The gala was being held at the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel, a building Ryan had passed 1,000 times but never entered. Walking through the marble lobby in his new tuxedo, Victoria's hand light on his arm, he felt like an imposter, like someone would recognize him as the warehouse worker playing dress-up and escort him out. But Victoria moved through the space with practiced ease, nodding to acquaintances, guiding Ryan toward the ballroom with the kind of confidence that came from attending these events her entire adult life. The ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than Ryan's entire grocery budget. And the people, hundreds of them, all dressed in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, all moving with the easy assurance of wealth. Ryan recognized faces from news broadcasts, business magazines, society pages. These were the people who ran the city, who made decisions that affected thousands of lives, who existed in a stratosphere so far above his own he'd never imagined reaching it. "Breathe," Victoria murmured. "You're doing fine." "I don't belong here." "Neither do half these people. They're just better at pretending." She snagged 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter, handed one to Ryan. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people who are actually worth knowing." The next hour was a crash course in high society. Victoria introduced Ryan to doctors, philanthropists, business leaders. Some were genuinely kind, asking about his work with real interest. Others looked through him like he was invisible, their attention focused entirely on Victoria. A woman in a red dress, someone important based on the deference others showed her, cornered Victoria near the silent auction tables. "Victoria, darling, I heard a rumor you were seeing someone. Is this him?" "Margaret, this is Ryan Hayes. Ryan, Margaret Chen. She's on the hospital board." Margaret's eyes raked over Ryan with undisguised assessment. "Hayes, I don't recognize that name. What family are you from?" "I'm not from a family," Ryan said evenly. "Just a family." Margaret's smile turned condescending. "How quaint. And what is it you do, Mr. Hayes?" "I work in warehouse logistics." "Oh." The single syllable dripped with dismissal. "How interesting." Victoria's hand tightened on Ryan's arm, a warning or support. He couldn't tell which. But before she could intervene, Margaret had already turned back to Victoria. "We really must talk about your pledge for next year, darling. The hospital is hoping for an increase." "Of course, have your people call my people." Victoria's voice was pleasant but firm. "If you'll excuse us, I promised Ryan a dance." She guided him away before Margaret could respond, leading him toward the dance floor where couples already swayed to the quartet's music. "I'm sorry about her," Victoria said quietly. "Margaret thinks old money is the only money that matters. I don't have any money, old or new, which is exactly why you're better than all of them." She stepped into his arms as they reached the dance floor, positioning his hands at her waist. "Do you know how to waltz?" "Not even a little bit." "Then follow my lead. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's all it is." Ryan stumbled through the first few steps, hyper-aware of people watching them, judging him. But Victoria was patient, guiding him through the rhythm until he found a semblance of coordination. "See?" she said. "You're a natural." "I'm stepping on your feet." "Only occasionally." Despite himself, Ryan laughed. And once he stopped focusing on the mechanics, stopped worrying about everyone else, he realized something. Dancing with Victoria felt right, natural, like everything else about being with her, terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said softly. "I know this isn't easy for you." "It's not as horrible as I expected." "High praise." "I mean it. Some of these people are genuinely awful, but some are actually decent. And," he met her eyes, "you're here. That makes it bearable." Victoria's expression melted into something tender. "You're going to make me cry. And my makeup artist specifically told me this mascara isn't tear-proof." "Then don't cry." Too late. But she was smiling, radiant and real, and Ryan felt something shift in his chest. Maybe they could make this work. Maybe the differences between their worlds didn't matter as much as the connection between them. The illusion shattered 20 minutes later. They were at their assigned table making small talk with the other guests when a man approached. Tall, distinguished, probably in his 50s. He clapped a hand on Victoria's shoulder with familiar ease. "Victoria, I was hoping I'd see you tonight. We need to discuss the Singapore deal." "Charles, this isn't really the time." "Nonsense, it'll take 5 minutes." He finally seemed to notice Ryan. "Who's this?" "This is Ryan Hayes, my—" She hesitated just a fraction of a second. "My date." Charles's eyebrows rose. "Your date? I see." He extended a hand to Ryan. "Charles Whitmore, I'm on the board at Lane Global." Ryan shook his hand, noting the expensive watch, the subtle power in the man's grip. "Ryan works in logistics," Victoria said, and Ryan heard the defensive note in her voice. "How fascinating. Victoria, about Singapore. We really need your decision by Monday. The investors are getting anxious." "I'll review the proposal this weekend." "It's just, your father would have decided already. He never let personal matters interfere with business." The comment landed like a slap. Victoria's posture went rigid, her smile turning to ice. "My father is dead, Charles. I'm making the decisions now, and I'll make them on my timeline, not yours." Charles had the grace to look abashed. "Of course, I didn't mean to suggest—" "Yes, you did. You've been questioning my leadership since I took over. But let me be very clear. I will run this company my way. If the board has concerns, they can schedule a proper meeting. But I will not discuss business at a charity gala while I'm with my partner." Partner. She'd called Ryan her partner. Charles's gaze flicked between them, calculation obvious in his expression. "Right. Of course. Enjoy your evening." He left, but the damage was done. The easy atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by tension Ryan could feel radiating from Victoria's body. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "He had no right. Is that what it's always like? People questioning you, comparing you to your father?" "Yes, but I can handle it." "Can you? Because it looked like he got under your skin." Victoria's jaw tightened. "He did, but that doesn't mean—" Victoria Lane. A woman with a camera had appeared at their table, press credentials visible around her neck. "I'm from the Herald. Can I get a quote about your mystery date?" "No comment," Victoria said firmly. "But our readers would love to know more about—" She said no comment. Ryan's voice came out harder than he intended. The reporter's eyes gleamed with interest. And you are? Leaving. Ryan stood abruptly. Victoria, can we go? He saw the conflict on her face, the desire to stay, to fulfill her obligations, warring with concern for him. Finally, she nodded. Of course, let me just… But word had spread. More people were looking their way now, phones emerging from expensive clutches, the subtle click of camera phones creating a symphony of intrusion. Ryan felt exposed, trapped, like an animal in a zoo exhibit. I need air, he muttered. He didn't wait for Victoria's response, just headed for the exit, weaving between tables and concerned looks. Behind him, he heard Victoria making excuses, her voice carrying across the ballroom. But he couldn't stop, couldn't stay in that room full of people who saw him as either a curiosity or a mistake. The hotel's exterior courtyard was blessedly empty. Ryan leaned against a stone pillar, breathing hard, trying to calm the anxiety clawing at his chest. Ryan. Victoria had followed him. Of course she had. I'm fine, he said without turning around. You're clearly not fine. I just needed a minute. Talk to me, please. Ryan finally faced her. She looked worried, beautiful, and completely out of his league standing there in her designer gown while he fell apart in his borrowed tuxedo. This is your life, though, he said. People questioning your decisions, reporters trying to get quotes, everyone watching your every move. This is what being with you means. Yes, but it doesn't have to consume us. We can set boundaries. Can you? Because that board member sure didn't respect any boundaries, and that reporter certainly didn't. How long before someone digs into my background, finds out about Sarah's medical debt, about my 2 jobs, about how utterly ordinary I am? You're not ordinary. Stop saying that. His voice echoed off the courtyard walls. I am ordinary, Victoria. Painfully, obviously ordinary. And standing in that room full of people who matter, who have power and influence and wealth, just drove that home. I don't fit in your world. I never will. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. So what are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if I can do this. The scrutiny, the judgment, the constant feeling of being not enough. It's too much. Is that really what this is about? Or are you looking for an excuse to run before things get too real? The question hit harder than Ryan expected. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've been looking for a reason to push me away since the moment I walked into your life. First, it was the money you didn't know about. Then it was the differences between our worlds. Now it's the media attention. There's always going to be something, Ryan. The question is whether you want to fight through it or use it as justification to give up. I'm trying to protect my son. From what? From someone who loves you both? From stability and support? From me? Ryan felt the fight drain out of him. From getting hurt. We're all going to get hurt eventually. That's life. But you don't get to decide that for Liam or for me. You only get to decide for yourself. She was right. Of course she was right. But knowing that didn't make it easier. I need time, Ryan said finally. It's to think, to figure out if I can handle what being with you actually means. Victoria nodded, wiping her eyes carefully. Okay, take all the time you need, but Ryan, while you're thinking, remember this. I love you. I love Liam. And I would walk away from everything, the company, the money, all of it, before I walk away from you. That's how certain I am. Then she did something that broke his heart. She kissed his cheek, gentle and final, and walked back into the gala alone. Ryan stood in the courtyard for a long time, watching the light from the ballroom windows spill across the pavement, listening to the muffled sounds of music and laughter. Inside, Victoria was probably making excuses for his absence, smoothing over the scene he'd created, maintaining her composure the way she'd been trained to do her entire life. And he was out here, running away like always. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Dude, you're on social media. Is that Victoria Lane? Ryan didn't open the messages that followed. He already knew what they'd say. Questions, speculation, gossip about the warehouse worker dating a billionaire. He called an Uber and went home. Liam was still at Ryan's mother's house. The apartment felt cavernous in its emptiness. Ryan changed out of the tuxedo, hanging it carefully despite wanting to tear it off and never see it again. He sat on the couch in sweatpants and tried to make sense of his feelings. He loved Victoria. That was the truth he couldn't escape. Somewhere between her first visit and tonight, she'd become essential. But love wasn't always enough. He knew that better than anyone. His phone rang. His mother. "Did I just see you on the news with Victoria Lane?" Ryan closed his eyes. "Maybe." "Ryan Alexander Hayes, you better start explaining." So he did. He told her everything: the rescue, Victoria's visits, the developing relationship, tonight's disaster. His mother listened without interrupting, a skill she'd perfected during Sarah's illness. "So now what?" she asked when he finished. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should end it before Liam gets more attached, before we all get hurt. And the other part? Wants to be brave enough to try." His mother was quiet for a moment. "You know what Sarah told me before she died?" Ryan's throat tightened. "What?" "She made me promise that if you ever found someone else, I wouldn't let you sabotage it. She said you had a tendency to sacrifice your own happiness for everyone else's protection, and she was worried you'd use her death as an excuse to never risk loving again." "Mom, I think she'd like Victoria. I think she'd tell you to stop being an idiot and fight for something real." "What if it doesn't work out?" "What if it does?" She echoed Victoria's words from weeks ago. "Ryan, you can't protect yourself from pain by avoiding connection. All you do is guarantee loneliness. Is that really what you want for yourself? For Liam?" After they hung up, Ryan sat with those questions. Was he protecting Liam? Or was he protecting himself? Was he being practical, or was he being a coward? The answer settled over him like certainty. He was terrified. Terrified of loving Victoria and losing her. Terrified of introducing Liam to a happiness that might disappear. Terrified of not being enough for someone who could have anyone. But beneath the terror was something else. Hope. Want. The desperate desire for a second chance at the kind of love he thought he'd buried with Sarah. Ryan picked up his phone and typed a message to Victoria. "I'm sorry, can we talk?" Her response came immediately, like she'd been waiting. Always. He glanced at the clock, almost midnight, but some conversations couldn't wait. "I'm coming to you. Where are you?" "Home." "I'll send you the address." 20 minutes later, Ryan stood outside a building he'd only ever seen from a distance. The penthouse took up the entire top 2 floors. Security in the lobby required him to show ID and wait while they confirmed with Victoria. She answered the door in jeans and a sweater, makeup washed off, eyes still red from crying. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Ryan stepped inside an apartment that was less ostentatious than he'd expected, but still unmistakably luxurious. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spread out like stars, but he barely noticed the view. "I was an idiot tonight," he said without preamble. "You were scared. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, I hurt you because I couldn't handle my own insecurity. That sounds pretty idiotic to me." Victoria closed the door, leaning against it. "What made you come here?" "My mother. And Sarah." "Sarah?" "She apparently knew me well enough to predict I'd try to sabotage anything good that came along, and she made my mother promise not to let me." He stepped closer. "I've been so focused on protecting Liam from potential loss that I forgot to protect him from a different kind of damage, watching his father be too afraid to reach for happiness." "Ryan, I'm not done. I need to say this while I have the courage." He took a breath. "You were right. I was looking for excuses to run. Because as long as I'm running, I can't be rejected. I can't fail. I can't lose someone else I love. But the problem is I already love you, and pushing you away doesn't protect me from that. It just guarantees I lose you anyway." Victoria's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I can't promise I'll always fit in your world," Ryan continued. "I can't promise I won't panic at fancy events or feel inadequate around your colleagues. But I can promise I'll try. I can promise I'll show up. And I can promise that when things get hard, because they will get hard, I won't run. I'll stay and fight for us." "Are you sure?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "Because I need you to be sure, Ryan. I can't do this halfway. If we're doing this, we're all in. Both of us." Ryan crossed the remaining distance between them, taking her hands in his. "I'm sure. I'm terrified, but I'm sure." What changed?" "I realized that being scared and being brave aren't mutually exclusive. And I realized that I'd rather risk everything with you than play it safe alone." Victoria pulled him into a kiss, that tasted like salt and champagne and hope. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "We're going to have to figure a lot of things out," she said. "I know. The media attention isn't going to stop. If anything, it'll get worse when people realize we're serious." "I know that too. And my work schedule is insane. I can set better boundaries, but there will still be late nights and business trips and obligations. Then we'll figure it out together, because that's what people do when they love each other. They adapt, they compromise, they build something new." Victoria smiled through her tears. "When did you get so wise?" "About 5 minutes ago. Don't let it go to your head." She laughed, the sound breaking the remaining tension. "Stay tonight, please. Just hold me and let me believe this is real." So Ryan stayed. They talked until dawn, sharing fears and hopes and plans. Victoria called Liam's grandmother to explain that Ryan wouldn't be picking up Liam until later. His mother's knowing laughter suggested she'd already guessed where he was. As the sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ryan watched Victoria sleep beside him and felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Peace. Not the absence of fear or uncertainty, but the quiet certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. And that was enough. The morning after was when reality set in. Ryan woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and momentarily forgot where he was. Then he saw Victoria beside him, still asleep, her dark hair spread across the pillow, and everything from the previous night came flooding back. The gala, the panic, the decision to stop running. His phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Marcus, increasingly frantic. A few were from numbers he didn't recognize. And one was from his mother, sent at 6 a.m. "Bring Liam home whenever you're ready. He's fine." "You're fine. Everything is fine. Stop overthinking." Victoria stirred, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw him, her smile was soft and unguarded in a way he'd never seen before. "You're still here," she said. "Where else would I be?" "I half expected to wake up and find you'd convinced yourself this was a mistake." Ryan reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm done running, remember?" "I remember. I just needed to make sure you did too." They lay there for a moment, comfortable in the silence. Then Victoria's phone buzzed on the nightstand, and buzzed again, and again. "I should probably check that," she said reluctantly. "Is it always like this?" "Usually worse. I turned off most notifications last night." She reached for the phone, scrolling through messages with a practiced efficiency. Her expression shifted from peaceful to concerned. "Ryan, you need to see this." She handed him the phone. The screen showed a news article from the Herald published 3 hours ago. The headline read, "Billionaire Victoria Lane's Secret Romance. Who is Ryan Hayes?" Below it were photos from the gala, Victoria, and Ryan dancing, his awkward posture obvious even in still images. A photo of them in the courtyard, mid-argument. And worse, photos that someone had clearly dug up from social media. Ryan at the beach with Liam, Ryan leaving the warehouse, Ryan's apartment building. The article was a blend of facts and speculation. It mentioned Sarah's death, the medical debt, Ryan's 2 jobs. It quoted anonymous sources calling their relationship everything from inspiring to opportunistic. One particularly cruel comment suggested Ryan was clearly after Victoria's money. "I'm sorry," Victoria said quietly. "I knew this would happen eventually, but I hoped we'd have more time." Ryan kept reading. There were quotes from people at the gala, descriptions of his awkward demeanor and clear discomfort in high society. The article made him sound like either a gold digger or a charity case, and he wasn't sure which was worse. "How do you handle this?" he asked. "Mostly I ignore it. Sometimes my PR team issues a statement. Occasionally we threaten legal action if they cross certain lines." She took the phone back. "But Ryan, this is mild compared to what it could be. If we stay together, if this gets serious, they'll dig deeper. They'll interview your coworkers, your neighbors, maybe even try to talk to Liam's school. They can't do that. He's 6 years old. They shouldn't, but that doesn't mean they won't try." She sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "This is what I was trying to protect you from. This is why I didn't tell you who I was at first." Ryan thought about that, about the choice she'd made, however flawed, to give them a chance before the world got involved. "I get it now. Why you wanted to just be Victoria? Do you regret it? Knowing? No, but I hate that our private life isn't actually private. It never will be, not completely, but we can control the narrative. If we present a united front, if we don't give them drama to feed on, eventually they'll move on to the next story. How long does that take? Depends on how interesting we are. Could be weeks, could be months. Ryan rubbed his face, feeling the stubble he'd need to shave. I need to get Liam, and we need to figure out how to explain this to him. What are you going to say? The truth, that I care about you, that you care about us, and that sometimes people are going to say things that aren't true or aren't fair. He's going to have to learn that eventually, anyway. Victoria reached for his hand. You're a good father. I'm trying to be. They got dressed, Ryan in last night's clothes, which felt absurd in the morning light. Victoria called her driver while Ryan tried to smooth his hair into something presentable. The ride to his mother's house was quiet, both of them lost in thought. Ryan's mother lived in a modest ranch house 40 minutes outside the city. She answered the door before Ryan could knock, Liam visible behind her legs. Dad! Liam launched himself at Ryan, who caught him easily. Hey, buddy, did you have fun with Grandma? We made cookies and watched a movie, and Grandma let me stay up late. Of course she did. Ryan looked at his mother over Liam's head. She was studying Victoria with undisguised interest. You must be Victoria, she said. I'm Eleanor. Come in, both of you. The house smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Eleanor had clearly been baking that morning, cookies cooling on racks, the kitchen warm and inviting. She poured coffee without asking if they wanted any, the kind of casual hospitality that came from decades of motherhood. Liam, why don't you go get your things? Eleanor suggested. Your dad and Victoria will be right here. Once Liam was out of earshot, Eleanor turned to them with an expression that was equal parts warmth and warning. I saw the article this morning. Mom. Let me finish. I saw it, and I want you both to know that I don't care what those people write. What I care about is whether you're happy and whether you're being smart about this. She looked at Victoria. My son has been through hell, and my grandson has been through worse. If you're serious about being in their lives, you need to understand that it's not a game. It's not exciting or romantic or whatever story you're telling yourself. It's real, and it's hard. And if you're not completely committed, now is the time to walk away. Mom! Ryan was mortified, but Victoria didn't flinch. You're right to question my intentions. If I were you, I'd be asking the same things. But I need you to know that I love your son. I love Liam. And I'm not here because it's exciting or different. I'm here because they make me feel like I'm finally living instead of just existing. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled. Good answer. Now sit down and have some coffee while I make sure Liam actually packed everything. After she left, Ryan let out a breath he'd been holding. I'm sorry about that. Don't be. She's protecting you. I respect that. Victoria wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. She's right, though. This is going to be hard. Harder than last night. Are you sure you're ready? I'm sure I want to try. When they returned to Ryan's apartment with Liam, there were reporters waiting outside the building. Not many, 3, maybe 4, but enough to make Ryan's stomach drop. Dad, why are those people taking pictures? Liam asked from the back seat. Ryan and Victoria exchanged a look. This was it. The moment they'd been dreading. Remember how I saved Victoria from the ocean? Ryan said, turning to face his son. Yeah. Well, Victoria has a really important job. She helps a lot of people. And sometimes when people have important jobs, other people want to write stories about them. Like superheroes? Sort of. Except Victoria isn't a superhero. She's just a regular person who works really hard. I'm not a regular person to some people, Victoria added gently. My job makes me interesting to reporters. And because your dad and I are friends, they want to write about him too. That means sometimes people might take pictures or ask questions. Does that make sense? Liam thought about this seriously. Are they going to ask me questions? They might try, but you never have to answer. You can just say no thank you and keep walking. What if they're mean? Ryan felt his chest tighten. Has someone been mean to you already? No, but Tommy's parents got divorced and people at school asked him lots of questions and he said it was mean. Well, your dad and Victoria aren't married, so we can't get divorced, Ryan said. trying to keep his voice light. But yes, sometimes people ask questions that feel mean. When that happens, you tell me or your teacher, okay? Okay? Victoria's driver pulled up to a side entrance, avoiding the reporters. They made it inside without incident, but Ryan could see the cameras tracking their movement through windows. "This is insane," he muttered. "It'll die down," Victoria promised. "Give it a few days." But it didn't die down. By Monday, the story had spread to national outlets. By Tuesday, Ryan's warehouse had reporters calling for comments. By Wednesday, someone had tracked down Sarah's parents, who gave a quote about how disappointed Sarah would be to see Ryan using their tragedy for personal gain. That one nearly broke him. He was sitting at his kitchen table staring at the article when Victoria let herself in with the key he'd given her 2 days ago. "I saw it," she said without preamble. "They made it sound like I'm betraying Sarah's memory by being with you." Victoria sat down across from him, her expression fierce. "You know that's not true." "Do I? Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish, if I'm putting what I want ahead of what's best for Liam. What's best for Liam is having a father who's happy, who shows him that it's okay to move forward after loss, who models healthy relationships instead of martyrdom." "You sound very sure of that." "I am sure. Because I've watched you with him, Ryan. You're an incredible father. And you're teaching him that love is worth the risk, even when it's scary." Ryan wanted to believe her, but the doubt had taken root, fed by cruel articles and Sarah's parents' condemnation and the constant pressure of public scrutiny. "What if we took a break?" he said quietly. "Just until this dies down. Give Liam some normalcy." Victoria's face went pale. "Is that what you want?" "I want my son to be able to go to school without people asking him questions about his dad's love life. I want to go to work without reporters calling. I want—" He broke off, frustrated. "I want a normal life." "Normal is overrated." "Easy for you to say. You've never had it." The words came out harsher than intended. Victoria flinched but didn't back down. "You're right. I haven't. But I've also learned that running from problems doesn't solve them. Taking a break won't make the media go away. It'll just make them write stories about our breakup instead of our relationship. So what do? We stand together, we refuse to let them define us, and we wait them out." She reached across the table for his hand, "But I can't do that if you're not all in. So you need to decide, Ryan, right now. Are you with me or not?" Ryan looked at their joined hands, thought about the past few weeks, the laughter, the connection, the feeling of being seen and valued for exactly who he was. Thought about Liam's face lighting up when Victoria visited. Thought about the future he'd been too scared to imagine until she'd made it seem possible. "I'm with you," he said, "but we do this my way." "What's your way?" "We get ahead of the story. We control the narrative instead of letting them control it. You said your PR team could help. Let's use them." Victoria's expression shifted to something like pride. "What did you have in mind?" 2 days later, Victoria's PR team arranged an exclusive interview with a respected journalist known for fair human interest stories. They met in Ryan's apartment, the familiar surroundings making him feel slightly less terrified. The journalist, a woman named Patricia Chen, who'd covered everything from war zones to celebrity weddings, settled into Ryan's worn couch with professional ease. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," she said. "I know this must be overwhelming." "That's one word for it," Ryan said. "Why don't we start at the beginning? How did you two meet?" Ryan told the story simply, honestly. The beach, the rescue, Victoria's gratitude. He talked about his initial reluctance, his concerns about their different worlds, his fear of letting Liam get attached to someone who might leave. "But she kept showing up," he said, glancing at Victoria beside him. "Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, just with herself. She helped Liam with his homework, she washed dishes, she made us feel like we mattered." "And you?" Patricia turned to Victoria. "Why pursue this relationship when you could have anyone?" "Because Ryan is the only person who's ever seen me as just Victoria," she said. "Not Victoria Lane, CEO, not Victoria Lane, billionaire, just me. And that's rarer than you might think. There's been speculation that this relationship is transactional, that Ryan is after your money." Ryan tensed, but Victoria answered before he could. "Ryan refused the first payment I offered him. He's refused every gift, every gesture, every attempt I've made to help financially. He works 2 jobs to support his son because he believes in earning his own way. The idea that he's with me for money is not just wrong. It's insulting to the kind of man he is. What about you, Ryan? How do you handle the wealth disparity? Honestly, some days better than others, Ryan admitted. I'm never going to be comfortable with private jets or designer clothes or the kind of luxury Victoria grew up with. But I've realized that's not what our relationship is about. It's about showing up for each other, supporting each other's goals, being partners in the ways that actually matter. The interview continued for another hour. Patricia asked about Liam, about Sarah, about their future plans. She was fair but thorough, and by the end, Ryan felt wrung out but hopeful. The article ran the following Sunday. The headline was simple: How a warehouse worker and a billionaire found love beyond the headlines. It was honest, nuanced, and remarkably kind. Patricia had woven their story together with skill, highlighting their genuine connection while acknowledging the very real challenges they faced. She'd even included quotes from Liam's teacher about what a dedicated father Ryan was, and from one of Victoria's longtime employees about her commitment to work-life balance and employee welfare. The response was overwhelming. Social media, which had been largely critical, shifted to supportive. People shared their own stories of unlikely relationships, of love crossing class boundaries, of second chances after loss. The cruel speculation didn't disappear entirely, but it was drowned out by something more powerful: genuine human connection. We did it, Victoria said, reading the comments on her phone while curled up on Ryan's couch. We actually did it. Did what? Took control of our story, showed them who we really are. Ryan settled beside her, pulling her close. It's not over. There will be other articles, other challenges. I know, but we'll face them together. Liam wandered in from his room, clutching Mr. Trunk. Can Victoria read me a story? If she wants to, Ryan said. Victoria smiled. I'd love to. As she followed Liam to his room, Ryan watched them go and felt something settle in his chest. Not the absence of fear. He'd probably always worry, always feel inadequate in some ways, but the certainty that they were building something real, something that could weather storms. His phone rang. Marcus. Dude, I just read the article. You're like famous now. I'm really not. Are you kidding? Half the warehouse is talking about you. They're calling you the Prince Charming of logistics. Ryan groaned. Please tell me you're joking. Okay, I'm joking, but seriously, man, I'm happy for you. Victoria seems great. She is. You gonna marry her? The question caught Ryan off guard. He hadn't let himself think that far ahead, hadn't dared to imagine a future that permanent. I don't know, he said honestly. We're taking it one day at a time. Well, when you do propose, make sure I'm invited to the wedding. I want to see what a billionaire reception looks like. After they hung up, Ryan sat with Marcus's question. Marriage. Permanence. A future where Victoria was family, not just girlfriend, where Liam had a mother figure again, where Ryan had a partner in every sense of the word. The idea terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. Months passed. The media attention faded to a background hum, occasionally spiking when Victoria made a business decision or attended an event, but nothing like those first overwhelming weeks. Ryan and Victoria found their rhythm: dinners at his apartment mixed with occasional fancy events, weekends at the beach with Liam, quiet evenings where they just existed in each other's space. Victoria restructured her work schedule, delegating more to her executive team and setting firm boundaries around family time. Ryan picked up fewer extra shifts, accepting Victoria's help to cover Liam's expenses, but insisting on maintaining his independence where he could. They fought sometimes. About money, about schedules, about how much to shelter Liam from Victoria's public life. But they learned to fight fair, to listen, to compromise. And they always came back to each other. It was Liam who finally forced the conversation Ryan had been avoiding. They were at the beach, the same beach where everything had started, building sandcastles in the late afternoon sun. Victoria was helping Liam construct an elaborate moat system while Ryan watched, content. Victoria, Liam said seriously, are you going to marry my dad? Ryan nearly choked on his water. Victoria's hand stilled on the sand. Would you like that? She asked carefully. If your dad and I got married? Liam considered this with the gravity only a 6-year-old could muster. I think so. Because then you'd be my family for real, and you wouldn't have to leave. Sweetheart, I'm not leaving whether we get married or not. I promise. But people leave. Mom left. Ryan's chest constricted. They'd talked about Sarah's death many times, but hearing Liam's lingering fear voiced so plainly still hurt. Victoria sat back on her heels, giving Liam her full attention. You're right, your mom did leave, and that was so hard. But she didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because she was sick, and sometimes our bodies stop working no matter how much we want them to keep going. What if you get sick? I might someday. We all might. That's part of being alive. But Liam, I'm healthy right now, and I'm not going anywhere by choice. Your dad and you're my family, the family I choose, and I will fight every single day to stay here with you. Liam threw his arms around her, and Victoria held him tight, her eyes meeting Ryan's over his son's head. The look they exchanged held an entire conversation about loss and fear and the courage it took to love despite knowing nothing was guaranteed. That night, after Liam was asleep, Ryan and Victoria sat on his apartment's small balcony, sharing a beer and watching the city lights. He asked the question I've been too scared to ask, Ryan said. Which question? About marriage. About forever. Victoria was quiet for a moment. And what's your answer? I'm terrified, Ryan admitted. Terrified of screwing this up. Terrified of not being enough for you long term. Terrified of breaking Liam's heart if it doesn't work out. Those are all valid fears. But fear isn't a good enough reason to not try. Not when the alternative is living a half-life, always holding back, never fully committing. Ryan set down his beer, turning to face her fully. I can't give you a fairy tale proposal. I can't afford a ring that matches your lifestyle. I can't... Stop. Victoria placed her hand over his mouth. I don't want a fairy tale. I want real. I want messy and complicated and imperfect. I want you, Ryan, exactly as you are. He kissed her palm, then pulled her hand away so he could speak. I don't have a ring. I don't have a plan. But I know that I love you. I know that I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I know that I want Liam to have you as a mom, not just as Dad's girlfriend. So if you're asking what I want, I'm asking. Then yes, I want to marry you. I want to build a life together. I want all of it, even the scary parts. Victoria's smile was radiant. Good, because I wasn't sure how much longer I could wait for you to ask. I wasn't asking, you were. Then let me make it official. She slid off her chair and onto one knee, right there on his small balcony overlooking a parking lot. Ryan Hayes, will you marry me? Ryan laughed, tears streaming down his face. You're insane, like... Is that a yes? Yes, of course it's yes. She kissed him there, on the balcony, under stars they could barely see through the city's light pollution. And it was perfect precisely because it wasn't perfect. No photographer, no elaborate setting, just two people choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. They told Liam the next morning. His reaction was pure, uncomplicated joy, the kind only children could manage. He insisted on calling Grandma Eleanor immediately, then wanted to know if this meant Victoria would read him bedtime stories every night. Every night I'm here, Victoria promised. And when you're not here, then we'll video chat. Deal? Deal. The wedding planning was its own adventure. Victoria's world expected a lavish affair, 500 guests, designer gown, exclusive venue. Ryan wanted something small and intimate. They compromised with a ceremony at the beach where they'd met, followed by a reception at a local restaurant that Victoria rented out for the evening. Sarah's parents were invited, but didn't attend. The rejection hurt, but Ryan had made peace with it. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. The ceremony itself was simple. Liam served as ring bearer, taking his job with adorable seriousness. Eleanor cried through the entire thing. Marcus gave a speech that was equal parts heartfelt and embarrassing. And when the officiant asked if anyone objected, Liam loudly announced that he thought his dad and Victoria were perfect for each other, drawing laughter from everyone present. Ryan's vows were straightforward. I promise to show up every day, even when it's hard. I promise to see you, not your title or your money, but you. I promise to be brave enough to love you completely. And I promise that I will never ever regret running into those waves. Victoria's vows were equally simple. I promise to choose you, always. I promise to make our family my priority, no matter what my company demands. I promise to love Liam as my own. And I promise that every day for the rest of my life, I will be grateful that you saw me when I was drowning, in water and in life, and decided I was worth saving." When they kissed, the small gathering erupted in applause. Liam cheered loudest of all, jumping up and down with Mr. Trunk in his arms. The reception was relaxed and joyful. Victoria danced with Liam, then with Ryan, then with anyone who asked. Ryan found himself talking to board members from Victoria's company, discovering that several were genuinely kind people who respected his wife for more than just her last name. His wife. The phrase still felt surreal. Late in the evening, after most guests had left and Liam had fallen asleep on a booth bench, Ryan and Victoria stood at the beach's edge, watching waves crash against the shore. "Do you ever think about that day?" Victoria asked. "What would have happened if Liam hadn't seen me?" "Every time we come here," Ryan admitted, "I think about all the ways this could have gone differently. All the choices that had to line up perfectly for us to be standing here now." "Do you believe in fate?" "I believe in choice. I believe Liam chose to speak up. I believe I chose to run into the water. I believe you chose to keep showing up even when I pushed you away. And I believe we both chose this." He gestured between them, over and over again, until it became something real. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you ran into those waves." "Me too." Behind them, the restaurant was closing down. Ahead, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm, indifferent to human drama. But here, in this moment, Ryan felt the kind of peace he'd thought he'd lost forever when Sarah died. It wasn't the absence of pain or struggle. It was the presence of love strong enough to carry both. "Ready to go home?" Victoria asked. Home. Not his apartment or her penthouse, but the space they were creating together. A place where warehouse workers and billionaires could build something neither could have imagined alone. "Yeah," Ryan said. "Let's go home." They woke Liam gently, bundled him into the car. As they drove through the city, Ryan looked at his family, his son in the back seat, his wife beside him, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was real. Years later, when reporters would ask about their unlikely romance, Victoria always gave the same answer. "My husband didn't save a billionaire that night. He saved a woman. And in doing so, he reminded me what actually matters." And Ryan, if pressed, would add, "I didn't run into those waves thinking about who she was or what she had. I ran because someone needed help. Everything else, the love, the marriage, the family, that was just life rewarding the choice to care about another human being." They never forgot the beach where it all began. Every year on their anniversary, they returned with Liam to build sandcastles and watch the waves. Every year, Liam would point to the spot where his dad had rescued Victoria and tell the story to anyone who would listen, embellishing slightly more each time. And every year, Ryan and Victoria would stand at the water's edge, holding hands, grateful for the courage to run toward danger instead of away from it. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't chase success or accumulate wealth or maintain perfect control. Sometimes it's running barefoot into dangerous waves without knowing who you'll find or what you'll gain. Sometimes it's opening your heart when every logical reason says to keep it closed. Sometimes it's choosing love over safety, connection over protection, hope over fear. Ryan Hayes had learned this lesson twice in his life. Once when he'd loved Sarah completely, despite knowing he'd lose her, and again when he'd loved Victoria despite knowing he might not be enough. And in learning it, he'd discovered a truth that no amount of money could buy and no tragedy could erase, that the human heart is most alive when it's risking everything for someone else. He'd run into the storm, and he'd come back holding not just one life, but an entire future in his arms, a future where love mattered more than status, where courage meant vulnerability, and where a single father and a billionaire CEO could build something beautiful from nothing but honesty and hope. And that, in the end, was worth every risk, every fear, every moment of doubt. Because real love, the kind that changes you, challenges you, completes you, is always, always worth the run into the waves.